Hello, folks. Norwood General Manager Tony Mazzucco coming to you with our weekly Facebook Live update on COVID and a number of other topics. We're going to go ahead and get started in just a moment, going over our COVID numbers and some COVID plans of action, as well as updates on a few other items. So we will begin in just a moment as soon as people get a chance to log on. This week's show brought to you by, since I seem to be doing this, our new facilities department. I never know which side of the camera to grab and show. We'll talk about that a little bit with our new facilities department, our combined facilities department, and some of the projects they've already been able to undertake, and some of the savings we're able to see, and how much better some of our facilities are already running now that we've sort of shared the leadership and staff of our facilities department, and a lot of great things to come with the facilities department. As always, it seems to be a norm. I'm sure somebody wrote a book on doing these Facebook Lives, but I always ask, and I know everyone else does, if one or two folks can just comment in the comment section that they're watching and that we are that the audio and the sound is good. I know we've had a little bit of a trouble in the past with the audio not syncing up with me talking. That seemed to get better last time. I'm not sure how it is this time. Maybe I'm just talking a little bit too fast, but it seems to have gotten a little bit better. We worked on it a little bit during the week. And shout out to Joe, who is the producer of today's show. I have finally come up with the term for folks who help put on the Facebook Lives behind the scene, and I think producer is the appropriate title for the show. All right, great. Looks like the audio and the sound are good. We are going to go ahead and get going with a discussion of our COVID numbers. Let me make sure my screen is in the right place here. There we go. So, good news, bad news. Actually, mostly neutral news today. We are still yellow, which is moderate risk for COVID. Our rate is actually 5.0 per 100,000. Last week it was 5.2. The week before it was 6.4. So we've trended down a little bit for 2 weeks, but not enough to truly be statistically significant. The numbers can shoot up quicker than they tend to come down, but that's a good sign. We didn't go up. We actually went down a little bit, although the difference I would say is actually probably more or less that we were flat for the week, which is a good thing. Obviously, we like to be in green, if not gray, but staying steady is happened, which is important. Total tests to date in Norwood is up to 12,128, which I think is incredible. That's more than a third of the community. We've had 1,736 tests in the last 14 days. We're going to talk about a new testing program working with the hospital soon, but that's actually a slight increase. It's about a 10% increase in testing over the last 2 weeks. Probably with folks going back to school and folks going back to work, there's an increase in testing. One number that's interesting is our positivity rate is at 1.61%. It was 1.60 last week and 1.62 the 2 weeks before. So our positivity rate seems to be hovering right at that 1.6 level. I believe, I haven't checked the state's numbers today, but that's a little bit below the state, but there were times we were a little bit above the state. But again, a matter of a couple of people can swing these numbers one way or another. So good news, we are still in the yellow. We would like to be in the green. We continue to monitor our numbers every week. Interestingly enough, the average age of a case in Norwood has dropped a bit. It's now just at about 55 years. I actually think it's 54.8 years. I could be wrong. We posted the data there. But we've seen over the last 6 months with this that the average age has actually dropped a little bit in cases. We are lucky that our cases recently have been mild. We've had no clusters. That certainly could happen. Most of them are attributed to people attending a busy social event and or to family members. So one person in the family ends up testing positive, and then unfortunately 2 or 3 other people in the household end up testing positive. What's interesting is that doesn't always happen. There have been households where a mom or a dad ends up testing positive and the spouse and the kids just do not test positive. It's possible they had it and maybe it's already passed, and that mom or dad or Billy or Susie were the last ones to actually get tested, or maybe the only ones who had some symptoms from it. But we have not. It's fascinating that most of the time it's a household, except sometimes it seems as if some households get no illness at all. Luckily, again, as of the last week, our cases have been mild. I do want to talk a little bit about our friends in Wrentham and Plainville, because there's a couple of issues that have happened in both communities, and I think it's important for both our numbers and to understand how fragile some of these numbers can be with the state. You may not have heard. You may have read that Wrentham is now in the red. So Wrentham's a little bit smaller than us, and they shot from green into the red. So it is possible. Quick question about Dean Street. I will mention Dean Street, other than there's no updates, other than it is on track and on budget and still on time to be done in October. So Dean Street is going great. Rentham was in green, and they had so many cases in a short period of time, they shot up to red. They have a cluster. I know everyone gets worried and hears, what's a cluster? What does that mean? It just means a number of cases tied to one specific incident, and it may not be an incident. It may be a location. It may be a business. It could be a home. If you have enough people living in your home, that could be a cluster. In Rentham's particular case, it was a nursing home, which is unfortunate. Nursing homes have been doing very well lately. It's certainly in Norwood they've been doing well, but they've had a rash at a nursing home. Not a rash, that's a bad choice of words in this case. They've had a number of their cases, almost all of them came up in one single nursing home. Now, we know that the virus is particularly deadly for anyone who's immunocompromised, but to look at the town of Rentham and the town of Norwood and say, well, where am I more likely to get COVID? Well, if you just followed the state's color-coded map, you would say, well, Rentham, they're red, whereas Norwood's just yellow, and I think Westwood is in the green. But their numbers were based on that specific incident at a nursing home where they saw an increase in their cases. So the prevalence of COVID is no more, no less in one community versus the other. You could probably argue it's even higher in Norwood than Rentham, even though they're in the red. Now, Rentham decided to make, I believe the King Philip Regional School District is going back remotely anyway, so they made no change there. Their elementary schools are going back on a hybrid model. They chose to make no change to that because even though their numbers have gone into the red, it really is related to the nursing home cluster that they had. We've discussed this before where a case in a nursing home counts as a case in that town. Even if somebody's moved from their home 5 towns over into a nursing home in Norwood, or in this case in Rentham, and then they test positive, it's a Rentham case, or in our case, it will be a Norwood case. We had the same issue with, unfortunately, when somebody passes away at a nursing home, it's considered passing in generally in the town that the nursing home is, when they could have lived 90 years of their life in a neighboring town, spent 3 weeks in this town, the number counts here. So Rentham's numbers shocked up. They've dropped. They will probably not drop for another 2 or 3 weeks, but they've made no changes other than to ask people to continue to be vigilant. Plainville is such a small town at around 12,000 people. They jumped into the red. It was a handful of cases, and it was household cases. So what happened is it was really only, I think, 2 or 3 cases, but then within a couple of days, they tested the entire households, and those households also tested positive. So it's a matter of 4 houses in a town like Plainville can all of a sudden cause their number to jump to red. No real cluster. They were smaller households, but it was, and they weren't interrelated. It wasn't one specific incident that they could tie these households to. It's just sometimes people in the household get it, sometimes people don't. The majority of the time they are, but it was a couple of households in Plainville that caused their numbers to shoot into red. My understanding as of today, and these things could always change, Plainville's not making any adjustments to school programming or other programming because this wasn't really a slow creep up of their numbers where there was a lot more spread. It was they had a couple of cases, and then by the time those cases were registered and it factored into the numbers, they had a couple other people get tested, and they ended up testing positive, and the number went up quite a bit. So obviously they're fairly close by communities. Plainville and Rentham, both smaller than us, both more rural than us, both in Norfolk County, and they have both shot up into the red. My guess is if they've completed testing at that nursing home, and as Plainville appears to know that these are just related to a couple of households, all things being considered, in about 2 weeks, their numbers may drop off. Now, it does depend on sort of when these tests accrue into your numbers. So if you got 15 tests in one day, you have to wait 2 weeks plus the data period from that to have your numbers come down. On the other hand, if you've had sort of 5 tests a day over the course of 5 days, then you've really got to wait a little over 2 weeks from the end of the last one for your numbers to drift down. So overall, countywide, we're doing well. We have a few communities in red. We're holding our steady in yellow. The data is really tough to look at on a town-by-town basis. I know everyone's interested in that, and that's why we release it, which is contrary to how public health has done things in every state for the last 40 or 50 years. But it's sometimes really hard to look at this data on a small scale and say, gee, Rentham had a spike. Well, is Rentham really red? Their prevalence and their positivity rate might be substantially lower than ours, but they're in red, we're in yellow. So it's not that the data is not relevant, it's just you've got to take it all looking at the larger context and really digging in the data and saying, okay, well, what caused numbers to go up or cause numbers to go down? In a funny world, you could have 25 people from Westwood come to a party in Norwood, and nobody should do that, but come to a party in Norwood. One person in Norwood is positive. They get those 25 people from Westwood infected, and God forbid that happens. They go back to Westwood. Well, Westwood's numbers have gone through the roof, and it was all related to one person here or an incident or an event here. So it's really looking at the statewide numbers, which are sort of hovering, which we anticipated, to really get some good data. So positive that we're still in yellow. It's come down a little bit. Even if we held at this level, because at some point we have to accept there's going to be I know we're overusing the word new normal, but there's going to be a new normal of what that average positivity rate is, what those average case counts are, and where they're going. The state does have their rapid response team, so when a community sees a spike in cases, they provide additional assistance through contact tracing, and they'll provide additional enforcement if you are concerned that that's what the issue is. We haven't gone through that process. Of course, we would hope the state would work with us because we know our data the best, and we may know what our problems are and where we think it's coming from. If we're not seeing cases tied to restaurants and bars, there's really no point in sending additional inspectors in to really go crack down on restaurants and bars or retail shops or shutting down schools if we're just not seeing that where it's coming from. So hearts go out to our friends in Rentham and Plainville. We hope we don't find ourselves in the situation of being red, but we always could, and we could find a cluster here. If you tested all the nursing homes today in Norwood and you found a cluster, our numbers could very well go to red, but it may actually mean that there's no difference in the spread in the community. But to summarize, we're at yellow, 5%. We were 5.2 last week, and per 100,000, I should say, 5.4 last week, and 5.2, and then 6.4 the week before. So slight trend downward and kind of a flattening. Another couple of weeks, we'll know sort of where we are in relation. I did talk about Dean Street. The only updates we have is it is going well. It is on time, on budget. I want to thank everyone for bearing with us through this. Taking down a road and a bridge is never easy. I know we've tried to make folks as happy as we can. We've gotten some folks who aren't happy. I'll be honest with you, and I've said it before, there is no way to close a major street like that and redo a bridge and have everything work out. It's just never easy. There's never a perfect solution. And I always tell people, you think of a traffic system, think of all the road network in town as sort of your artery system. And I know we say, gee, if you could just slow traffic down here on my road, it would maybe help me out. But then if it diverts the traffic somewhere else, now you've got a high traffic problem somewhere else. So road networks are like your arteries. You got to just be careful. You can't just pinch this here, pinch that there. And when you take out a major road, there's almost no easy way to do it. So I appreciate everyone bearing with us on that. But luckily the project is, I think we're at the 75% completion point. My math might be a little bit off, but still on budget and on time, which is the most important thing. And we're knocking wood, because I don't want to come back and have this one bite me in the butt, but we're through the more complicated phase of the project that could lead to where you find more of the problems and the oopsies that would lead to the project getting delayed. Could still happen, but so far it's doing, Dean Street is doing well. A couple of hospital updates, nothing major. We continue to meet and work with the hospital. I know there's some frustration out there that there were a couple of deadlines given and it seems like nobody's going to meet them. As the hospital continues to open their building up and look at what's going on, they found more damage. So early on, it's, hey, we think we can get this up and running in 4 or 6 weeks. And then you find that, geez, the damage is so extensive, it's going to take longer. It's going to take even longer. They're sort of in a tough spot now where it looks like to get the ER up and running, they need to construct a exterior utility plant to bring in a lot of the utilities into the building. And that's at the cost of millions of dollars and several months of construction, and fitting that puzzle into what they do with the rest of the building is currently challenging. But they're trying to identify a path to do that, and we're working with them on it. There's an alternative that they might be able to set up an ER somewhere else. The problem with that is, again, it's an outlay of millions of dollars for a lower level of service, and then it's just going to go away in a year or two anyway if they do a full reconstruction. But we met again today with the hospital. We've got meetings with the hospital, with the governor's office, and federal officials. We are moving towards trying to find a better a path towards doing something to get an ER up and running. It's going to come down to time. It's going to come down to whether or not it ends up being practical. And then there is a financial component. Stewart has said that they're committed to getting an ER open, and they know that they're going to take a loss on it. They're going to take a loss on other things, and they're fine with that. It's just a matter of it becomes tough to say, let's construct and I'm making these numbers up because we haven't gotten any engineering estimates, but let's do a $3 million temporary power plant to get 60% of the ER back up and running for maybe a year, and then we're shutting it down. And the cath lab is what we really want to make sure we get up and running at the ER, because right now folks with a heart issue are being transferred further away. But of course, cath labs, and I don't know the first thing about cath lab as it happens for catheters for the heart. Again, complicated stuff. The building systems, as we've said before, for anyone who hasn't heard this, are just shot. The mechanical, electrical, and plumbing aren't there. The oxygen that they need isn't there. It's that's the big problem that they're facing at the hospital. But Stewart has worked with us, and we do believe we're going to be able to have a COVID testing clinic. It'll be sort of an outdoor at a trailer type clinic. We're going to partner with the hospital to do that. So we'll at least have COVID testing through the end of the calendar year available for Norwood residents and anyone else. We're looking to use some state funding and partner with the hospital to be able to do that hopefully soon. We think that would be a good thing to make sure we have one specific site in town that's consistently able to offer COVID testing, which would be good for us, especially as the winter comes in. Everyone is making wild predictions. Numbers are going to go away. Numbers are going to go up. Numbers are going to be through the roof. It's going to be worse. It's going to be better. The truth of the matter is there is no one out there who knows. If we continue to practice good habits, hopefully the numbers won't get too high, but the testing will only become even more important, especially as the vaccine ends up getting released. Bob, any talk on drainage solutions for Dean Street by the train bridge? Very, very costly and very challenging, but we're taking on we're going to put forward to town meeting two drainage projects, two stormwater management projects this year. And what we're hoping is to kick off, Mark Ryan and I have to get a presentation back to the board the next couple of weeks, a couple of things, one of them being some sort of a study committee to look at the possibility of establishing a stormwater utility that would start to give us the revenue stream we need to really get serious about some of these drainage issues. It's incredibly costly, and it would crowd out so many other items in the budget, road work and other things. So we're looking to be able to try to come up long-term with a solution. We don't want to just throw a couple Band-Aids on there and hope it works. We want to start comprehensively addressing the situation. We are proposing to do a lot more water work and road work in the next couple of years. That helps too, because every time, even though you're paving a road, you're fixing any drainage issues that you have, you find some underlying issues. Every time you reline water pipes, you're able to find out where you have leaks, and that contributes when you do have a high velocity storm, the overall stability of the earth and the ground under the road work. So nothing immediately for the Dean Street Bridge or Dean Street by the train bridge, because that area there, and I got to tell you, I got stuck in front of Poyer's in the last storm. I actually, God bless the folks in South Norwood for not laughing at me when I fell over into the water moving a tree branch. But that particular part of town definitely needs some work. It's challenging because it's already at a low point. And Catherine, to your comment, yeah, we are going to be, that's why we're working with the hospital. We met with them today. We think we have a framework that'll work to hopefully get something up and running so that we just have a consistent place to do it. The state has their pop-up clinics that they can come and help you if you have an increase in numbers. They send sort of the rapid response testing. That's great. If we had a big situation, we would certainly want to do that, but we would like a consistent place to just be able to say, look, just go here, and it's available every day from 10 to 2 or something like that. So we are working with Stewart on that, and Sal and I think we're going to be able to pull something off and get something up hopefully pretty soon. So we have good, consistent testing. Vaccine. Funny story, just so everyone knows, there's about 6 different vaccines out there that already exist. They just haven't gone through the proper testing process. Because some people say, oh, well, there's no vaccine. They haven't found a vaccine yet. No, they have. A number of companies have found vaccines. They're just going through the testing to actually make sure they work. I think Moderna's vaccine, as it was developed in February or March. It's just a complicated and challenging testing process, which is a good thing. We want to make sure that whatever ends up getting out there is safe. The rollout of a vaccine would follow the rollout of the H1N1 vaccine, which we dealt with here locally. And the CDC and FEMA have prepared for these things for years. So the way generally these work is you start with first responders, critical infrastructure workers, healthcare workers. I know they've said teachers would go to the front of the line as doses start becoming available. And then it would likely be elderly, high risk, immunocompromised, et cetera, and it would all roll out. So you'll see some news stories where they'll say, oh, well, everyone won't have a vaccine until late 2021. I think they'll be a little bit more aggressive. Once they know something's worth, they'll be able to move heaven and earth and get it done quickly. It will take time before there's an availability for every single one of the 350 or so million Americans to get a vaccine. That'll take time, but once you can start taking care of your compromised populations, your essential workers, your high-risk individuals, things will get a lot easier from there, and then you can roll it out to everyone in the general public. One question I got is, well, what about when people refuse to take a vaccine or they don't want to because they're anti-vaxxers or whatever? I don't know what the social solution to that will be, other than what a lot of hospitals do with the flu vaccine is if you don't get, not all hospitals, but if you don't get a flu vaccine, you're required to wear a mask throughout the entire time you're working. So I think you'll probably see an employer-based solution where, and I could be wrong, employers, starting with hospitals and other large institutions, will say, hey, if you don't have your COVID vaccine, you need to wear a mask the entire time you're working. And masks aren't a big deal, but if I had a choice between getting the vaccine and not wearing a mask versus not getting the vaccine and wearing a mask, I would much rather the peace of mind of the vaccine. I think vaccines are great, but I would also rather do that. I think most of my workforce would rather do that. So hopefully we'll see. That's how it'll make sure that folks get it. I hope everyone on their own would decide that they would want to get one. It'll likely be sort of a two-step vaccine, and it may be some years where it's like flu A and flu B, but it's better than what we have now, which is just, a little bit of hope and prayers. So that's how we would get through to how a vaccine would go out. So we're actively preparing, looking at our mass dispenser sites and making sure we have everything we need to be able to roll that out when it starts to the critical populations. Some good news on our flood grant program. We had originally appropriated $500,000. Accounting wanted some verification from the state, or our auditors, I should say, wanted some verification from the state on two pieces of the pie. We have received final verification from A&F, the Secretary of Administration and Finance, and DCR on that remaining $90,000. So the full $500,000 that the selectmen appropriated or approved will be able to go to the grant relief fund for flood grants. We have started issuing paperwork already for approved grants, starting with the tier 1 applicants. We've started cutting some checks already as well. Unfortunately, some people have gotten denial letters. It's either that the application didn't meet the conditions for the grant, and that's obviously unfortunate, but we had certain things. We had to focus on the habitability of the home. So we had some folks who maybe submitted just for landscaping, or we had some folks who submitted, but they ended up getting insurance reimbursement that was either equal to or more than the grant. So we had to make adjustments for that, owner occupied and whatnot. But that money is starting to flow out every week now. We're cutting a few more checks, and we have the full $500,000. So we'll be able to help not everyone, but quite a few people who were damaged with the storm. Particular credit goes to a couple of people. Certainly Bernie Cooper in my office, who has headed up the program. Monica Medeiros, who actually works out of the HR office, has been our main point person on the program, as well as two of our summer interns, Xavier Cullen and Dante Zalvadar. We had a number of other volunteers who helped with site review. Too many to mention. There were probably about 15 of them. I think I saw Bob Blood on the call earlier, and he was one of our volunteers, so we're certainly appreciative of that, who did some of the site reviews. But Monica in particular has been working this program really from day one, and is probably the reason we're able to work with DCR and get the that remaining amount of funding approved. So thank you to her in particular for all of her work in this program. A couple of emails have come in that I wanted to go over, I guess questions that people had said. Somebody had emailed us and said, could you do something, could you do summaries of the Facebook Lives, and is there a way to get to them for people who don't always have access to social media? Norwood Community Media, which is our public access broadcasting company here, and incidentally, Norwood Community Media is the best public access channel in the United States of America, hands down. They record all of these, or they take the recorded videos. They put them not only on their website, so you can get them if you have internet access from the website. They also broadcast them on Norwood Community Media, our public access channel. We actually think, from looking at our numbers and from hearing people, more people watch them after they go on Norwood Community Media than necessarily through the Facebook Live feeds. So if you don't, even if you don't have Facebook, you can always watch these updates from the internet. You can log on, but you can go on to Norwood Community Media's website and view them from there. If you don't have that, then you have the option of just watching them in Norwood Community Media. If you don't have internet access where you can watch something on the internet, you don't have social media, and you don't have cable, I'm not sure what else we can do, but people are hearing about them and emailing us about them, so I assume that there's got to be some internet access out there. So again, you can watch them live. They always stay available on our Facebook page to watch after the fact. Norwood Community Media puts them on their webpage, and Norwood Community Media does broadcast them a couple of times for a week or so afterwards on their page. They also do that with the Dr. Thompson's Facebook Lives. I don't know if they're doing it with the Rec Department's Facebook Lives, but the Rec Department's Facebook Lives tend to be shorter and more topical and very specific to certain programs that they're doing. Sometimes they have a general update, but they're really reaching out to the rec users, if you will. Incidentally, the Rec Department, it may be sold out, but they have a great drive-in movie program coming up. I have already reserved my ticket for this coming Saturday night. I think it's Spies in Disguise. I think next week is Jurassic Park. So kudos to the Rec Department for putting that together and everything else that they do. But we can work on trying to get summaries on these. Although I think the idea was that these would be a little bit interactive, that we can take some questions while we're here. I know some folks are only interested in some issues and not other issues. We can work on trying to develop that a little bit more, but you can always watch them on Facebook. You don't need a social media account, on Norwood Community Media's website, and they're always broadcast on Norwood Community Media as well. We can certainly talk to them about increasing the number of times they broadcast them if people think that they're valuable. We did get a question again about the post office and not having a drive-up mailbox at the post office. So I certainly empathize with that, but a couple of things I want to make sure are clear for everyone. We do not control the post office. I have 22 or 24 departments, depending on if I can remember them all in one day, that report to me, and then a couple that don't directly report to me. I'm responsible for overseeing workforce development in our region for some reason, but I'm not responsible for the post office. I feel your pain. I strongly recommend what everyone needs to do is write Congressman Lynch and send a direct letter to the postmaster in Norwood. Every post office has a postmaster. I can try to get their contact info. I don't know the name of the current postmaster. We've reached out to them. It's the post office's business, and that's who you need to get in touch with, is them and your congressional representative. We're just another voice at the table. We can't order them to put out a mailbox. We can't tell them to put out a mailbox. We need to make sure that they're hearing from residents. I think a concerted letter writing campaign, a phone call campaign, going in there and stopping and saying, hey, thank you for what you do. I appreciate it. You need to get a box. The post office needs to hear it. They're a completely separate government entity. Contact your congressman and contact the post office directly. We'll continue to reach out to them and send letters, but we're just one entity that they're hearing from that really has no control or authority over what they do. I think if they could find a way to get drive-up boxes and more ADA accessible boxes, I think that's great. But by all means, please email, call, write letters, leave messages for the post office, leave them nice little notes in there. Postal workers have a hard job, and it's certainly not the person at the front desk's decision. And I don't even know if it's the local postmaster's decision or if it's something that comes on down from a regional level, but call them, email them, write them, send them in letters, let them hear your voice. And I think that will get some action on what we need for what folks want for post office boxes. They did, I think, as everyone knows, had some trouble with people being able to reach into the lower boxes or the drive-up boxes and swipe out some mail that was there. So they certainly have to protect the integrity of the mail and the mail system. But please call, write, and send letters to the post office. And I would contact Congressman Lynch's office and say, we're having this problem. We're just one entity at the table with the post office. But we're there with you in spirit. A couple of questions about sort of the Haws Pool area and South Road and whether or not the town could do a couple of things there. We've got a question about could we add some lights to the Haws Pool area. We started to look at that last year, and timing just sort of ran away from us. We're thinking about like icicle lights along the fence. Long term, we're looking at ways to add more lights to the trees, but we think we'll be able to get some lights. Chris, we're talking about holiday lights, of course, to the Haws Pool area this year because it is sort of a darker area at night. And we'd love to see about looking up whether we could light up parts of the bathhouse. So maybe you can dress it up like a gingerbread house or something so you can see it from the street. So we're going to try to get some lights up this year. Same question about picnic benches for the Haws Pool area. And the answer to that is yes. We've ordered a lot of picnic benches for this year. We, of course, did Central Street. I think we added a few to Father Max. The Chapel Street Park, sometimes called Veterans Memorial Park, we added a few there. And we added a few to the little park area near the post office as well that people are actually using quite a bit. So the goal next year is even more picnic benches, and we've sort of targeted that Haws pool area, not necessarily the pool as much as the ponds, but as a great place. There's sort of one old dilapidated picnic bench there, or picnic table, but we've targeted that as an area that we think a bunch of picnic tables would be great, as well as lining up in the winter. I think people are starting to discover that space. There's a great trailhead there. We are possibly looking at a project in the next year or two with the CPA to add toilet units to a lot of our parks or trailheads. There's these Clivus units that are sort of self-compostable toilets that we might be able to have open, 6 or 8 months out of the year, so that there'd be some bathroom facilities at some of these places. And there was a question about a little pop-up libraries, a little library book slots that you see. Those are actually not managed by the Memorial Library. The rec department does one, and then a couple of private residents actually do some. But I talked to Charlotte today, and we think we're going to be able to get one, whether it's by the trailhead or by the Haws Pool area. If we don't do it this fall, it'll be in the spring as we sort of add some low-cost and high-use amenities to that area to kind of make it an enjoyable, not that it's not enjoyable, but you've got the pool and you get the park, and I think the ponds are absolutely gorgeous. We did our Fall Fest there last year, which was absolutely gorgeous, and we did the pumpkin float. So we're looking to use that space even more and add some amenities to it. So I think all of those things will come definitely in the spring, if not some of them a little bit before. The lights will try to get up for this holiday season. So that was actually a great email with some great suggestions, some of which we're working on and some of which we're now going to start working on as a result of that. So thank you. I think it was Kevin who sent that one in. I did talk a little bit about facilities department updates. As everyone mostly is aware, we now have a combined facilities department. So we used to have a sort of decentralized system on the town side, if you will, for general government buildings, and a centralized but under-resourced facilities department on the school side. We now have a facilities director and an assistant facilities director and 2 office support staff. There was already one in place, as well as a full electrician and a full plumber. And we rearranged some staffing to add some craftsmen to the position by having the DPW take over some field work and rotating things around. So we now have a real facilities department that we're going to look to build out, continue to build out over the next couple of years, so we can take care of more of our projects in-house. Now, one question we always get about that is, well, isn't it cheaper to contract it out? In Massachusetts, first of all, we always want to focus on what's best, and what's cheapest is not always what's best. In Massachusetts, we have to pay prevailing wage for any contracts. So once we pay that federal prevailing wage for an electrician or a plumber or an HVAC technician, it's oftentimes no cheaper than what we would pay hiring somebody and paying their benefits, including health insurance, OPEB, and their pension. So depending on the volume of work, we end up either paying the same. If you only needed somebody, 500 hours a year, it may not make sense to actually go ahead and hire, let's say, a plumber if you're only doing 500 hours of build labor. But what we found on the electrician side is we were paying the equivalent of a full-time position with all the benefits and the liability costs and getting the equivalent of part-time hours. So we've now switched that, and we're doing that in-house. They've done some great projects over the summer. Schools, as you know, are opening, and they are ready to go because of the great work the facilities department did and our great custodial staff over at the all the different schools. And it's sort of been a back and forth of what's the rule, what needs to get done. Well, this week this is the hot topic, and this week now you need to do this, and here's how you convert the furniture. And no, you need to convert the furniture this way, and you need to configure it this way. So it's been an incredibly challenging time for our facilities department to start off, but they've done an incredible job. Schools are safe, they are clean, they are actually spotless. I mean, they had them in great shape by July, and they just kept working on them. In terms of the combined facilities department, using grant funds and the staff of the facilities department, we were able to do some LED light conversions at the high school. We had budgeted $160,000 for LED light conversion at the public safety building and the library. We will be able to completely get those projects done for less than half of that budgeted amount because we're using the facility department labor as well as grant funding. So that's a couple of great projects. We'll see the energy savings over time once those projects are done. So that's another great example of some facilities projects they were able to do. We had a problem with our chiller unit at the town hall. Facilities was working on that 5 days into July. That came in faster and cheaper because we had the in-house staff able to do it. We've been able to make some improvements in the public safety building, which is our police and fire station. The fire department mechanic, a longtime mechanic, retired. The mechanic had always sort of been taking care of the building. Well, now we've moved some of that onto the facilities department, at least in terms of the management of the building systems, which is letting our new mechanic actually focus on our vehicles at the fire department, especially our critical vehicles. We're actually going to need to go to town meeting this fall to add tools for the mechanic shop. Our prior mechanic had mostly his own tools and didn't have the same certifications that the current mechanic has, so we can do more of the work on the big diesel equipment in-house and preserve our vehicles a little bit longer. But neither here nor there, being able to have sort of the oversight from the facilities department is now freeing up the mechanic to focus on actually taking care of vehicles and not getting distracted with building issues, which is going to be great for the fire department in the long run. It's also let the HVAC system in that building, which is old and failing and very temperamental, it ran all summer with almost no problems or no issues. Hasn't done that in 15 years. So that system still needs to get replaced, but at least it's been able to be stabilized by just having a different professional outlook looked at it. There's a project to redo the kitchen in the fire department this coming fall. It's hitting its 20-year mark, and it was not built correctly to begin with. Nobody puts a residential design kitchen in a commercial building, but for some reason we did when we built that building. The cost of that project is probably upwards of $500,000. Remember, it is more or less a commercial kitchen. We think we can get it for half that using the facilities department in-house. So we're going to go for the full amount just to make sure we have it there, but that's going to be one of the first projects where we're going to start to see significant savings. So the facilities department has been knocking it out of the park. I can't give them enough credit for everything they've been able to do. And it's going to be a model that I said a year or two afterwards, we would never understand how we didn't operate this way before. It's 3 months in and we don't understand how we didn't operate this before. We were able to use grant funding to bring on an energy manager. We share the energy manager position with the town of Sharon, and he's been doing great identifying grant opportunities, working with our Green Communities Grant Program and getting ready so we can get the full amount of money out of that program and more money in coordinating some of these LED and energy efficiency projects. It's been really, really good. I can't be happier with the facilities department. Really good things to come from the facilities department. So kudos to them for the great work they do. Maureen and Chris and Paul and the whole facilities team are doing an incredible job. Parking lots will be done soon. The town hall lot and the town hall annex lot are the last lots to be done. I think the contractor's done a great job. They certainly look great. After 40 years of not having them done, they certainly needed it. It's a welcome facelift to downtown. We are planning on installing in the spring, possibly early summer, a couple of electric charging stations downtown. We think we'll have 1 to 2 in the theater lot and 1 to 2 in the Babel's lot. But that'll likely be sometime this, I would say, mid to late spring. Maybe we'll have it geared up at the latest for next summer. So we're already thinking ahead and we're looking forward to that. I want to share a link here. The state has changed regulations to, Julie says, shout out to all the teachers, including new hires who are fabulous. School admin and tech support. Today was the first day of school. It was great. I agree, Julie. I'm actually going to go ahead and like that because I can do that. Couldn't agree with you more. Schools have not been easy to figure out what to do and how to get things done. I mean, it's a new world. Somebody recently said to me, oh, gee, you're just going to go spend money on this? And I said, well, why don't you go to the pandemic planning book and tell me how we're supposed to do it? There's nothing you can do. Nobody exactly knows how you're supposed to manage through a pandemic. The last time it was this bad was 100 years ago. So I know not everyone is happy with exactly the school's doing this or the school's doing that. It's an incredibly difficult situation they're facing. They've gotten it done. Kids are going back to school. We know it's a hybrid model. That could always change, but they've done an incredible job. I mean, they've had to reinvent what they do with fairly limited resources in a short period of time, and they're constantly having to pivot this way and that way and this way and that way because the rules are always changing. And nobody's done this before. Nobody's done this over the course of 6 months, let alone what they had to do in the fall. And I know there's a lot of concerns. How are younger kids going to be able to work on a Chromebook and learn digitally and learn remotely? Children are resilient, and we're going to have to get through it. I know some people wished everyone was in school, and some people wish it was fully remote. Sometimes the middle option is not always the best as a compromise, but that shouldn't take away from the fact that administrators and teachers have done an incredible job getting things geared up and getting things ready so that we can have a good school year and we can get the best education possible given all the challenge that we're facing. And I know some folks out there are going to think they're experts in this. Well, go to the pandemic playbook and read what the standard operating procedure is for educating in a pandemic. There isn't one, and there probably never will be, because hopefully if this ever happens again, and we hope it doesn't, we'll have figured it out by then, or hopefully it just doesn't happen again. So I couldn't agree more, Julie. They've done an incredible job under incredibly trying school circumstances. And kudos to the school committee for those poor five elected and uncompensated individuals giving up, 10, 15 hours a week. I know we like to say, oh, well, they ran for office and they get elected. They did. They don't get compensated for it. Not that they necessarily should get compensated for it. I don't think they should, but it's an unelected position, and they're serving the interests of the people and providing that public oversight and providing that public input. And the credit should go to them for having to make difficult decisions in a difficult time. It hasn't been easy on anyone. So kudos to them for getting up and running. I think we're going to have a good educational product this year, and we're certainly working to support the school and the teachers and the admins as much as we can and try to take as much pressure off their plate as we can. I do want to talk about flu shots. Reminder, anyone with kids in the school system has to get a flu shot by the children by December 31st. We're going to talk to the school department about seeing if we can set up, I don't want to say separate clinics, but a opportunity where it might be you come on this Tuesday or Thursday night to get your flu shot if you hadn't, but that wouldn't be until later in the year. You can get your flu shots at Norwood Pharmacy, at Walgreens, at CVS. You can call your primary care physician as well to get your flu shots. I encourage everyone to get your flu shots, not just your kids. Yes, sometimes the flu shot is only 40% effective or only 50% effective, or we inoculate for flu A and you happen to get flu B. It is still better than nothing. Don't get the flu. Don't spread the flu. Please get your flu shot. I highly encourage flu shots. Related to the schools, the state has released guidelines on remote learning enrichment programs. And these programs, you'll see some private vendors setting them up, and it's a system of childcare while students are doing their remote learning. We actually have our application ready to go. We have a regulatory framework ready to go. We brought on the inspectors we need to go through this process. It's all new, and this has all been dumped on local boards of health and local cities and towns to try to figure out as they go. But anyone who's looking to establish this, if you have a business or you have space and you're looking to do it, you can now go onto our website. There is an application process to go through so that we can make sure they get inspected. This isn't for folks who are doing something at their home. This is if a business is setting up a remote learning enrichment program. So I know sometimes you're seeing some like dance studios or something out there saying, hey, we've got space during the day. We can take kids from such and such a time. You're going to want to, if you're a parent and you have your kids going into one of those programs, you're just going to want to make sure they've talked to your friendly local board of health to make sure that they are inspected and that they are following all the different protocols. And if you yourself are looking to set one up, by all means, just give the health department a call and we'll get the link posted here in the comments so that way you can make sure to follow the rules and get updates on what you need to do to properly run one of those programs for those EEC programs. And again, kudos to the health department in particular for taking the lead, and as well as Chris Welch in my office who will be working on it, and Mark Schubert, our retired building commissioner who's coming back to help us out with it. The state just dumped this regulatory framework on cities and towns. I think their exact direction to the state, to boards of health, was, well, you should figure out who in your community approves it and come up with your framework. So we've been doing they've been doing a great job on that, everyone working together. I have a note here that I can't read my writing, e-rentals. I have emergency rental relief. We do have a program available through MAPC where you can apply for emergency rental or mortgage relief. I will talk about the Norwood Fund in a minute too. We'll get that link in here as well for some emergency rental and mortgage relief. The balance of the Norwood Fund is a little bit under $30,000. Needs have gone up. Donations have continued to come in. You're certainly always welcome to donate. We are seeing the needs start to creep up. It's different than it was before. When things really started, it was sort of immediate. It was this one specific problem or that one specific problem. Now we're starting to see sort of a general need increase for a couple of reasons. One, unemployment is lingering, particularly among working class individuals. A lot of the aid programs have, the extended unemployment has ended. That's hurt some people. It's tough for anyone to take a 70% pay cut and still make it work. We're also seeing the cost of a lot of products have gone up. So you're starting to see that creep in. And for somebody who's on a very fixed budget, it might, I may have the flexibility to say, gee, my weekly cost of going out to eat is $100, and gee, this week it was $106. Well, I might be able to absorb that, but for people on a really fixed budget, those food costs creeping up causes an issue. So please contact the Citizen Call Center if you are having food security issues or other issues, and we can see if we can help you. The rental relief program or the rental and mortgage assistance, I direct you to that if that's the challenge that you're having. But we do have some seniors and others who are facing issues as a result of COVID, particularly a lot of our veterans who have been cut off from different services. And we know we have a recurring, Teddy, our veterans agent, has been doing a great job, a recurring veterans project going on there to help veterans with food security. So you can certainly continue to donate, and you can certainly, if you're in need, call the Citizen Information Center. We will get back to you with an answer and try to find you help. And we're still working with the Norwood Food Pantry or the Ecumenical Food Pantry to bulk up their supplies as needed and provide them with what assistance they need. All right. Quick review: town meeting will be up in probably November. It's looking like big zoning change for the hospital. A couple of other zoning changes that'll be pretty big. Moving some money around, and then the capital plan, which has been delayed as well. And I did get a note here. Private residents can apply to host an enrichment program if that's what you're looking to do as well. You can click on the guidance there if you're interested in doing that. And I think I've covered just about all of my notes, including the ones I can generally not read. So I'll just reiterate, we are in yellow. We are still going to be in yellow for a little while. And but our numbers are roughly flat with last week. We talked about the hospital, and they're trying to look at two different avenues to get some sort of an ED back up and running. Time, cost effectiveness, and the practicality are the biggest challenges. It's just not easy. I guess one analogy, I'd given an analogy, the damages, think about 60 or 70% of your house being damaged, or think about a home construction project where you had to replace not just all of your lights, but your furnace system, all of your piping, all of your steam radiators, all of your electric wiring. I mean, just a massive project. So you want to go with that, which would take a year or two, or you basically need to build a furnace and an electrical line, everything else outside your house on a temporary basis and run that all in. So they're facing an insurmountable challenging. Question from Dave: new paving on Prospect Street looks great. Thank you. We are committed to paving. I'm a big fan of paving. Are they doing sidewalks as well? I'd have to check with DPW if they're doing the entire length of the sidewalk or if they're just trying to connect it in. I think that's phased in for a second phase of the project because sidewalks end up being more expensive than roads. But the goal is to those sort of heavily trafficked streets to start taking care of them and moving on out as we do more and more road walk. If it's the end of your driveway, do me a favor, send me an email with your specific address. You can send it to managers@norwoodma.gov, and we'll just make sure we circle back with them to make sure whatever gets done at the end of the driveway, that the lips get taken care of for your driveways as well. We don't plow private. We don't pave private driveways. Although I've often thought it wouldn't be a bad idea to do some sort of a better assessment and just do the whole street at the same time. But neither here nor there. We are putting a proposal before a town meeting that still has to go through its internal review to do more road paving and more water lining. And some of that water lining will come with additional road paving. If the road's beyond 5 years old, we'll probably could put a new seal coat on it. The road money will come out of the general fund. The water would be through, obviously, water rates, so it would cause about a 2.5% increase each year over a period of years. But then after year 6 or 7, when the borrowing maxes out, it will start to drop off after that. But we want to get our water in good condition. We want to help. We have some pressure issues in town. If we wait at the rate we're going to line all of our water pipes, it would be about a 30-year process. We're hoping to be able to cut that down to less than 10 years. So if we go forward with the full plan, it would be 5 separate approvals from town meeting in 5 different years. We would be looking at over a 5-year period, an additional $12 to $15 million worth of road work, depending on how the numbers work out, on top of the $1.5 million we do every year. So that would be close to $20 million worth of road work and close to $40 million worth of water lining. It would probably be the biggest 5-year investment in our infrastructure that we've ever done, but it's critical that we do it. And interest rates right now are so low, it will never be this cheap to bond those out again. So hopefully that will come, and we can continue to have all of our streets looking like Prospect Street. I talked about the hospital. Facebook Live, if you don't have Facebook or you don't like to catch these on Facebook, Norwood Community Media posts them on their website, and Norwood Community Media replays them on public access, so you can absolutely get the information there. We talked about mailboxes. If you have a challenge with the mailboxes or the lack thereof at the post office, please, please, please contact Congressman Lynch and the post office directly. We don't have any authority or any real influence over the post office. They just need to hear from enough residents, hopefully, and then they'll be able to find a solution for folks. Our flood grant will be able to have the full $500,000 value, which we're happy about. Kudos to certainly Bernie Cooper and Dante Zalvadar and Xavier Cullen, and most importantly, Monica Medeiros, who was the team of town staff who put that all together and have really been working on the whole program since day one. Haws Pool area, we're going to try to get some Christmas lights up there this year, and next spring, picnic benches and some additional amenities, including one of the little Take One libraries. We talked about our facilities department is doing a great job. We talked about everyone should get their flu shot. So I think I've just about covered everything I have. Do we have any questions from anyone who's watching the live? We're at about 50 minutes, so we're doing good on time. But as always, if we don't have questions, we will continue to go forward. We got quite a few mailed in, which was great. We appreciate that. And happy almost Halloween, everyone. If you have any questions, you can comment here. And again, email us at managers@norwoodma.gov. We always like to get those answered. Joe did post here the fall household hazardous waste and recycling day is Saturday, September 26th. We are doing it because of social distancing protocols. I just ask everyone make sure you wear a mask and be patient. It might take a little bit longer than normal this year just to make sure we can get through it and keep everyone safe out there. We also talked about if you're doing a remote learning enrichment program, please make sure if you're participating in one that they've worked with the health department. And if you're looking to host one, whether you're a business or a resident, please go through the application process so we can make sure it's inspected and safe for everyone. We have to do the Corey and Sorry checks and a few other things just to make sure we're keeping everyone safe. With that, I have nothing else. I guess we can go ahead. If there's no other questions, we can go ahead and end this week's live. I want to thank everyone for joining us. And we will continue to bring these to you every week. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can always email us at managers@norwoodma.gov. If you're suffering from food insecurity, that is, you're having trouble getting food or other problems, please call our Citizen Information Center and call the Citizen Information Center in general if you have any questions. All right, thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great weekend, and I hope everyone enjoys what's left of the wonderful warm fall weather, and you can enjoy the last remnants of our outdoor dining. Thank you, everyone, and have a great week.